This city wasn't just dirty, it was forgotten. Not the kind of place people pass through and ignore, the kind they erase from memory completely. Streets buried under years of dust, buildings collapsing into silence, and everywhere you look, signs that life used to exist here. But not anymore. No footsteps, no voices, just decay. And for the next 72 hours, this entire city became my responsibility. No team, no backup, no shortcuts. Just me against years of neglect that had piled up layer by layer until it felt impossible to even begin. Because when you first look at a place like this, your brain does something dangerous. It tries to measure the scale. It calculates how much effort it would take. And then it tells you to quit before you even start. That's why most people never change anything. Not because they can't, but because they're overwhelmed before they take the first step. But I've learned something most people ignore. You don't clean a city by thinking about the whole city. You clean it by focusing on one small piece at a time. One street, one corner, one step forward. That's it. So instead of trying to fix everything, I picked a single spot. A place so covered in dirt, you couldn't even see the ground anymore. And I started there. The first few minutes felt pointless. Every movement barely made a difference. Dust lifted into the air only to settle back down again. Trash seemed endless. It felt like the city was fighting back, like it didn't want to be cleaned. And for a moment, I understood why people give up. Because progress at the start is invisible. You work and nothing changes. You push and it feels like you're stuck in the same place. But here's the truth most people never experience. Progress isn't something you see immediately. It's something you build. Quietly, repetitively, without reward, until suddenly it shows up all at once. So I kept going, sweep after sweep, step after step. No shortcuts, no distractions, just focus. And slowly, something started to happen. A small patch of ground appeared, then another, and another, until what once looked impossible started to look manageable. That's when everything shifted. Because the moment you see even a little progress, your mindset changes completely. What once felt overwhelming now feels achievable. What once felt impossible now feels like a challenge you can actually win. And that's the moment most people never reach, because they quit too early. Hours passed, then more hours. The sun moved across the sky, casting shadows over buildings that hadn't seen attention in years. My hands were tired. My body was slowing down. But the city was starting to wake up. And the deeper I went, the more I realized something disturbing. This wasn't just dirt. This was abandonment. This was time left unchecked. This was what happens when people stop caring completely. And it wasn't just physical. It felt like the entire place had lost its identity. But piece by piece, that started to change. Cleared road here. Cleaned entrance there. Windows that once looked dead, now reflecting light again. Small changes, but powerful enough to transform the entire atmosphere. Because environment shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. By the second day, the transformation was undeniable. What once looked like a lost city now showed signs of life again. Not fully restored, not perfect, but alive. And that's the difference most people don't understand. You don't need perfection to create impact. You just need progress. Every pile of trash removed, every surface cleaned, every step forward, it all added up. And what once felt endless now had direction, purpose, momentum. And momentum is everything. Because once you build it, stopping becomes harder than continuing. By the final day, exhaustion hit hard. Every movement required effort. Every step felt heavier than the last. But at that point, quitting wasn't even an option anymore. Not after coming this far. Not after seeing what was possible. So I pushed harder. Not for perfection, but for completion. Not for recognition, but for proof. Proof that even something this broken, this neglected, this forgotten, could be brought back. And when it was finally done, I stepped back and looked at what had changed. The difference wasn't just visible. It was undeniable. What once felt abandoned now felt restored. What once looked dead now carried presence. And what once seemed impossible had been done, not by a team, not with massive resources, but with one decision: to start when everyone else would have walked away. Because that's the real lesson here. It's not about cleaning a city. It's about understanding how change actually works. It doesn't come from motivation. It doesn't come from perfect conditions. It comes from action. Repeated, consistent, focused action. Even when it feels pointless. Even when progress is invisible. Even when quitting feels easier. Because the truth is, most people never fail because they're incapable. They fail because they stop too early. They underestimate what consistency can do. They underestimate how powerful small actions become over time. But if you keep going, if you push past that initial resistance, if you ignore the voice telling you it's too much, you reach a point where everything changes, where effort turns into results, where struggle turns into progress, where impossible becomes reality. And that's exactly what happened here. A forgotten city, brought back one step at a time.
Buongiorno, oggi è fresco, guardi che belli. Sì, grazie, prendo questi due. Perfetto, fanno 20 euro.